As we continue off with the conversations this morning, the Office of the Ombudsman, in collaboration with the Konrad Adenauer-Stiftung and the Zambezi Governor's Office, will host a 4-day workshop on human rights observance in the Zambezi region. Representatives from several government agencies, the policing sector, and other key experts will be present, to offer insight into human rights in Namibia. Joining us with insight on the 4-day workshop is Natalie Russmann, who is the country director of Konrad Adenauer-Stiftung in Namibia and Angola. Ms. Russmann, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us.
A very warm good morning from Katima, and thank you for having me this morning.
How is the weather in Katima?
Well, it looks pretty good. It's a peaceful morning and a bright sky, and we had some rain in the previous days, so it's looking quite good, and we are looking forward to having a very good and enlightening workshop today, continuing from yesterday onwards.
Amazing. Now, getting into the conversation of the workshop, what inspired the collaboration between the Office of the Ombudsman, the Konrad Adenauer-Stiftung, and the Zambezi Governor's Office for this workshop?
Well, let me point out that this workshop is long overdue. We already planned and organized it last year, but due to certain circumstances, we have to postpone it to this year. Let me point out that our relationship with the Ombudsman is quite established. And why? Because we do share the same values and the same vision, which is about access to justice, access to information, and providing a collaborative and holistic approach with different stakeholders like the governor of the Zambezi region. But let me also mention that it's also collaboration among the Kavango East and Kavango West governor. So it gives a platform that all these stakeholders can join forces and collaborate and share information, and also giving a platform about human rights, access to justice, and also knowing the rights, and then providing, of course, the public with the services of all the institutions and directives of the ministries here in the region. So it's also about pursuing the SDG goals, particularly SDG goal number 16, which is peace, justice, and strong institutions. And this is also the collaboration we join with the Office of the Ombudsman. We are very much interested in strong institutions, effective institutions, and accountable, because this is the core ingredients for democracy, for participative democracy. And that's why it's important to have a workshop like this on human rights, because it affects all of us and touches all parts of our life, starting with birth, starting with education, access to health, access to justice, as I mentioned earlier. And there are many issues around here that we need to discuss.
All right. What are some of your expectations from this workshop that will be taking place for 4 days?
Well, our expectations is that the different institutions and stakeholders that you mentioned earlier, the ministry, the policing, also the civil society, and the Office of the Ombudsman, which do have an office here in the Zambezi region, join forces and share their information. There's so many things we don't know about, and also providing justice to the people far from Windhoek, and so that they have a possibility to gain knowledge in order then to move forward and to collaborate, to exchange, and to discuss. There are many matters around education, around how to address a complaint when justice is not being served, when human rights been violated. Where do I go? How do I complain? How do I submit? How do I engage stakeholders? And this is the platform all about. also to share a lot of information. It's very informative. We have a lot of topics on the agenda, and all the stakeholders are well prepared, and they're providing information to the participants. And after that, always a discussion starts on, and we see how much this workshop is needed and how much information is needed in this region.
All right. Kindly just share some of the details on the topics and the sessions that are being covered or set to be covered during the workshop.
Well, as you mentioned, it's a 3 days workshop and almost 4 days. And there are a lot of topics we are about to share. Today we are continuing with land rights and the role of traditional authorities in that regard. And we also tackle on rights people with disabilities. We all know that there's still a stigma. It's still difficult for them to have access to justice, access to services. There are many new buildings here around in Katima, also from the private sector, but they do not very much have made any precautions for access for people with disabilities. For instance, someone with a wheelchair or visually impaired. And it's about also strengthening their needs and addressing their needs. It's about digitalization and public services on large in this region. And we also talk, of course, one of the main challenges in Namibia, but also in the region, which is gender-based violence. Is there still a need to know what is gender-based violence? Where does it start, and what can I do? We talked about the prevention actions. We talked about, for instance, a protection order, and what's the role of the policing in this regard? How far do their role goes, and when court needs to be involved? So we talk a very important topic in my regard, which is statelessness and registration. We're all living in the digitalized era. Digitalization is all around us, but though the internet connectivity is still poor, people have still problems getting access to internet. The infrastructure is also a challenge. But talking about registration, this is a quite important issue. It's about giving someone a legal identity. And you know, here in Katima, we are close to the border of Zambia, and there are also human trafficking. So identification, it's really important. It's about also giving access to economic and social services once you're not registered after birth of your child, which is a responsibility of every parents. There will be other challenges coming up later on, and this child might be disadvantaged later on their career, on their life. So giving knowledge on this, especially the Ministry of Home Affairs, which is out here as well, giving a really brilliant information in this regard about the registration of the vital events in life, which is really necessary in this country as well as anybody else. It's also a UN convention. And it's not about just birth registration, of course, also when it comes to that or marriages and so forth. And it's for a statistic use for the nation in general. So these are one or the other agenda that we discussed and that we tackled and that we give information to the different stakeholders and participants during these 3 days.
All right. Now, the governor of the Zambezi region, Alufia Sampofu, emphasized that human rights must be protected at all costs to ensure that justice and fairness in the realization of the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, how will you measure the success and impact of this workshop in advancing human rights awareness and observance in the region?
Yeah, let me first also by sending my thanks to the governor in emphasizing on this topic and giving that speech during the opening of the workshop. Well, to measure the impact and the outcome of a workshop, it's not easy because it's a long-term way that we all together have to go, and only with holding hands together and commitment, we might achieve and hopefully achieve the goals that we set in this workshop. But it's not something that we can easily measure by pressing on a button and here it comes, the outcome. What we see, the interactiveness of the workshop, the discussions that's been held and the questions that have been raised, that there's a lot of interest. And it shows also the impact already that the participants are ready to share the discussions and feel engaged and feel encouraged, better to say, to move on this kind of discussions and events. So, and it's not the single event at all. We will have follow-ups in the common time and maybe also next year another workshop like this to follow up to see what is the impact. But of course, this is just one step that we made, but of course all the institutions must be committed and take their mandate seriously to fulfill their mandate and their obligations. And if everybody is communicating with each other, I'm sure we will achieve better conditions and better circumstances when it comes to people with disabilities, GBV, and also public services and access to justice.
Amazing. Ms. Russmann, thank you so much for joining us. All the best with what's left of the workshop. And hopefully we get to see the workshop extended out to all other regions in Namibia.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me this morning. And yeah, for sure, we will reach out for other regions as well. It's important to also reach out to the regions which are far away. It's an effort, but this effort, it's really worth. Only if you are there, you can communicate with the people on the ground, you'll be able to understand better their needs and the next steps that needs to be done. Thank you so much and a lovely day.
Likewise, thank you so much for joining us. Natalie Russmann, who is the country director of the Konrad Adenauer-Stiftung, joining us this morning, talking to us about a 4-day workshop on human rights observance that is being held in the Zambezi region. Don't go anywhere. Good Morning Namibia continues shortly.